Why do we judge ourselves in the mirror? What if we haven't even had permission to love the way we look, in risking being called a narcissist? So in order to belong to a group and society, you should tone it down a little bit. Is that partly a reason we judge ourselves in the mirror? Because if we didn't, could it cause some isolation? And then the scariest conflict. What if you aren't even seeing yourself clearly? That you actually can't afford to like what you see, and others around would bring you back to reality. So it's safer to judge ourselves before anyone else gets to. Therefore, you don't get to a situation where you would need to defend your view of yourself. And naturally, sometimes a part of you wants to be free from all those outside opinions. Maybe you have secured your standing in the group in other ways. Therefore, you carry yourself a little differently. And those days you actually look pretty good too. Let's break this down and understand what's going on beneath the surface. Starting with the scenario that our view of ourselves conflicts with the way others might view us. Therefore, we might criticize ourselves before anyone else can. This is known as pre-emptive self-criticism, a defense mechanism. In social groups, unexpected negative feedback causes a sharp drop in dopamine and activates the anterior insula, the brain region associated with physical pain. If you look in the mirror and form a highly favorable view of yourself, you create a vulnerable predictive state. If society then delivers a negative evaluation, the discrepancy between your expectation and reality causes a severe prediction error. By preemptively judging yourself in the mirror, you align your self-evaluation with the lowest expected social denominator. If someone criticizes you later, no prediction error occurs, because you have already integrated that criticism into your internal state. Therefore, you don't get to the situation where you have to defend your stance, because you have minimized the functional distance between your self-evaluation and external feedback. You can imagine it is also quite exhausting to stand strong alone if the opinions conflict with yours. The brain expends significant metabolic energy trying to reconcile conflicting data streams. If you hold more positive view of your appearance, but the surrounding environment views you with indifference or criticism, your brain must constantly work to resolve this cognitive dissonance. This forces your internal perception down to a neutral or slightly critical level to eliminate this metabolic strain. It is cognitively cheaper to accept a lower self-valuation than to continually defend an independent, more positive self-image against external variance. This leads us to the point of belonging to a group. Do we risk belonging if we hold a higher positive view of ourselves? For the majority of human evolutionary history, exclusion from the primary social group meant physical death. Survival depended on maintaining a precise position within the group hierarchy. Social baseline theory proves that the human brain assumes proximity to a social group as its default, energy-efficient baseline. Deviating from the group by projecting excessive independence or unearned high status requires the brain to prepare for isolation, which triggers a stress response. Therefore, it's naturally avoided. Now, if you actually started to view yourself in a positive light, that would reflect in the way you carry yourself too. Individuals who appear to rank themselves above the collective average are suppressed with social leveling tactics, such as gossip, exclusion, or labeling someone judgmentally, calling them a narcissist. This is to level the hierarchy, so nobody rises above the average. And if we now think about what is the collective average, we can see it is lower than it truly is. Because globally, Many industries rely heavily on engineered insecurity. Without the underlying anxiety of not being enough, entire markets and the global economy would face a massive loss in profits. The beauty and cosmetics industry, the fashion industry, fitness and wellness. It makes sense that many view oneself as less than enough. Therefore, the average too is naturally more insecure than it truly needs to be. So as the group levels these individuals who appear higher status, it doesn't necessarily even represent the reality of the individual's worth. We see how much of our thinking, of our appearances, is perhaps shaped by these flaw correction marketing tactics. So when the world insists one's appearance is less than enough, it is not an absolute fact of reality. That view is more or less shaped by how much insecurity people have absorbed and how much appearance has been used as a currency in their social world. A bit more on that later. How about the point of securing our safety in a group in other ways and suddenly viewing our appearance in a less critical way too? Your visual cortex does not operate in isolation. Your emotional state, dopamine levels, and current goals dictate which physical attributes your brain prioritizes when processing your reflection. When social anxiety or a need for safety is dominant, top-down signals direct your attention to perceived asymmetry, skin imperfections, or structural deviations from the cultural average. Your brain actively filters for flaws to protect you from social errors. For the brain to shift from this critical state to autonomous state, it must receive unambiguous data indicating that your position in the social fabric or your physical survival is not under threat. It requires that your survival and social safety are already secured through alternate stable mechanisms, for example through work, relationships, or overall inner stability. In these cases, instead of searching the reflection to evaluate social risk, the brain views the body simply as a physical vehicle through which intent is executed. The reflection in the mirror is then processed through the lens of functional capability rather than social currency. So when we adopt a stance that's less dependent on external opinions, our brain's priorities shift from threat detection to maximizing energy efficiency and internal well-being. As this happens, the brain stops overanalyzing minor defects and starts to process your appearance more holistically, resulting in the perception that you look better. None of your features have actually changed. Those imperfections just aren't treated as socially risky anymore. To conclude, the way we perceive our looks in the mirror is closely tied to how safe we feel socially in that moment. When our sense of safety within a group feels unstable, for example due to lower performance, mood, dopamine levels, that directly or indirectly affects your status. You tend to see yourself more critically in order to belong, so you don't signal a level of status that others might feel the need to correct. And when other areas of our life feel stable, when our sense of standing, competence, or belonging is intact, your brain reflects that back in how you see your appearance. Because you have secured your standing in other ways, therefore you can afford to see yourself in a better light.